Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button, and I'm a granite sculptor. Welcome to video number 23 of the virtual stone carving apprenticeship. Squaring this block project is going really well. Went ahead, turned it. Of course, you have to rotate it and crib it differently so you can switch the belts from one side to the other in order to turn it. So it's pretty straightforward stuff. You've got to be careful with your edges because you have to pay attention. You don't want to drag them on something and break them. We've done a lot of work to set this up and make it good. Got it all set up to where everything's pretty square. As far as being, it's pretty plumb on these sides with some wedges at the bottom. Now we're at a point where we can strip this off. Either, we have a couple options. We can either cut this top completely with like a square, a carpenter's square, off of these adjoining faces, and use plumb blocks to set it in, but set it up with use a square to get a lot of this roughed off, or we can set it up level and just use plumb blocks once more to make sure that it's nice and square. It's good to do it both ways if you can. If you can square this up, sometimes you're producing a panel that may be in a out of position situation where you can't quite work on it by leveling every little aspect of it. You may be, we talked about doing a cross yesterday, and a small cross that would have, that was faceted. Instead of the sides being 4, it had 8 sides. And so there was going to be, well, at least one, there were going to be 8 sides on it. And you've got to be able to check a panel without having to move the stone every single time to do every single panel, because it can really turn out to be a nightmare. So we'll do a little bit of both on this one. I'm not sure, this spot right here may be just a little bit lower than this spot over here, so we may have to shift this line down a little bit. I'll try to clear that corner right there and see if I can square that up and see where that goes, because that's obviously the low spot. Then if I need to shift this line down a 1/4 inch or 1/8 of an inch, I will. The lesson on the next, these next 2 sides will proceed the same way. The only difference is this side I won't have to put a bunch of wedges on it to cut it, because I should have a flat surface to use as a joint here. What I'm going to try to show you on this one is that we haven't cut any corners yet. And on this one, now because we've got 2 sides, 3 sides, we've got to cut 2 corners without making a mistake. Now, a lot of people will set a corner in with a saw, use a diamond saw to cut this in. I do that to a certain extent, but you've got to be really careful with the diamond saw, because the diamond saw, obviously it cuts by friction at high speed, creates heat, and that can thermal your crystals here on the edge. And because they don't have support over here on this side or this side, outboard of that corner, it concentrates the heat right on that corner, and those crystals can get soft and pop off, and that ain't good. You've done all this work and you blow off a corner and you've got to go down 1/2 inch to make up for it. You're going to be pretty disappointed, especially if it's the 3rd or the 4th corner on a side. When we cut this back face and you get 3 of them cut, and now all of a sudden you got to push a whole face back because you blew a corner off of one edge. It does happen. You've got to figure out how to do it, how to approach that corner without causing it to happen. So that's going to be the focus of this video more than anything else. The rest of it, producing the panels, having the crown, finishing the edges together in unison to resolve the crown, all that, that's past history. You need to understand that's part of what you do. Now we're going to focus on doing these corners. So the video I put up on this one, I'm going to try to pay attention more to the corners than anything else, and give you, because we've got 2 corners to do that count, I'll try to show you 2 different ways to do it, on how to set it in. I prefer to cut the corners in with the chisel, not with a saw, but you can if you tip them in careful and then finish them with the chisel. But I like to limit the heat concentration on the corners, especially on a big crystal stone like this. This isn't any fun to cut. So it's been a great lesson. So let's cut some stone. Took my big scraper, pushed this spot down here, and it's still up almost 1/4 inch. So I should be good. I had some loss here. This is fragile, so I should be in stable stone when I go down 1/4 inch. Now I've also got a low spot here, so I'm going to go ahead and do this and just check to see, make sure that this doesn't happen to be below the line, because it's a little camouflaged by extra material here. And once those are all okay, then I'm going to go ahead and cut this. Now you got to be really careful here. I haven't cut a line on this red line yet because I don't want to go there until I know that's where I want to go. So don't rub it with your finger, and don't push here, because it's real easy to have a blowout right there, because that's not a cut edge. So you got to be super careful. So this is just trying to figure it out. And you can get into all kinds of complicated armatures to measure and whatever, and you see people putting those on the computer. Okay, I don't use those. On very rare occasions I'll do something like that, but for the most part you learn how to do this and you learn to judge it properly, and you don't need some complicated frame to do everything. If you're going to do that, get a point machine and set it up and use it the way a point machine is supposed to be done, and spend your money once and have something that works for a lot of applications. So we'll push this down and see how it looks. I also turn this stone. This is part of keeping track of what you're doing. We just spent the time to cut this face. Remember, it was skinny at one end and wide at the other end. Okay, we've still got some run out here, but it still looks like this is going to be wider at this end than it is at this end. So I want to keep it that same way to try to keep my head in the same place. You need to figure out how you work comfortably. If there's a certain kind of clothes that you wear, you know, you wear a pair of boots that fit right. I make a point of having my shirt, t-shirt, whatever, untucked. It's because you'll get gravel down your neck and it gets tangled up and everything, and it's not any good. So if my t-shirt's loose, any gravel can go right out and fall out of my t-shirt, instead of being uncomfortable and being a distraction. You want to eliminate distractions so that you're in a complete comfortable place. I take everything out of my pockets. I have an Altoid. Do whatever. I hate to say your ritual or superstition, whatever. Get into a comfortable place where you have no distractions. You want to be able to eliminate every distraction you possibly can, so you can pay attention to your stone, because you've got to. If you're uncomfortable, it probably isn't going to last long, because you're probably going to do something different. If you screw this stone up, it isn't going to get any better. You're going to have to fix it, if you can fix it. So let's cut these two low spots here, make this a pad, and we'll check that just to make sure that's not below this line, and then we'll go ahead and strip this panel off. Try to show you this. This was the other low spot, and as I worked it, I've got one spot here that fractured out right there. Okay, and so that's going to be really close to this line. Now, there's two things you could do. If this was something where I had to keep the dimension, I'd have to be really careful and try to, I'm working around it with a 9-point where I'm down about that level, and then I'll take my scraper and I'll work it off. I won't hit any of this because I hope it'll be secure. It's not on an edge, should be fine, but I don't know if it'll be below this line. The easy thing to do would be to drop this line maybe 1/4 inch, just go all the way around and just go ahead and cut it in. I'm going to try to salvage this to see, and I'll work this out very carefully to the edge, try to get it, make sure, checking my plumb blocks, checking my plumb, checking my level. It's still high here by, at least 3/16. And so I've got a little bit of playroom there, and this may be right on the line, but we'll see. So, but the easy thing to do here on your practice block, go ahead and just drop your line a little bit, know it's secure, and then you can go ahead and strip the panel off. I'm going to do this just because it's an exercise for me. This is training for me too. Every time I practice, good for me. So, we'll see how it turns out. This is coming, but it's still not clear whether it's going to be too deep. Instead of cutting this line with the chisel, with just a straight chisel, like I did the last time, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to be careful. I'm going to take a 2-blade to just put an initial tip on it, and I'm going to work it down to that line with my bush chisel to get it down to that red line. And then I can take the interior of it off without stressing this edge, just to see if we're okay. And once again, if this is on the fly and I had the extra stone that I knew about, I could just drop the line down a little bit, go ahead and lay it in and cut it right off. So let's tip this edge to make it strong. I'm going to stay away from this corner for right now because I'm going to show you that's a special concern. I am going to go ahead and bevel this to this corner and bevel that off. I want to make this top edge, I'm going to take away some of the interior carefully, so this will break really easy in. I want to make this top part kind of fragile. So I'm going to make sure there's nothing behind it. Hold on, I got to push hard and it might pull and come down underneath. You see me go into a wide chisel regularly on these edges. The reason for that is that I can work in the center, I don't know, half of the blade, and I can leave a little bit hanging over both ways, because what will happen with a skinny chisel is you'll end up missing and you'll catch a corner and you'll either push up or push down and wreck that edge. Coming out of 45, and then we'll work this off behind it. Towards the stone, not towards the edge. This is the wrong way to go. You want to go that way. I've got a nice flat ramp there that's really secure, and I can blend this bevel right over until I get to the edge. I'll cut that with a straight chisel. Then I can just continue this bevel, working the top off to get down to this panel. I think we're going to be really close. See the stone's moving a little bit. Just try to keep your wedges where they need to be. Make sure they're tight. I'm okay with this, but this isn't going nuts, and I'm not moving. I'm trying not to move it, so you got to just be careful. I could put a pad under here probably, which I may do, just to stabilize it a little more. This is going to clean up and work. This line is pretty much spot on the money, as high as it could be, so I'm happy with it. We got to start on corners, so I'm going to show you the way I normally do corners, the way I prefer to do them, and then we'll use the saw a little bit on this one to speed part of the process up. I already showed you I like to put a bevel on it. If this was a larger piece, I would have waited, like if say we had, you know, a fair amount of stone, I would have pushed a whole bunch back up here to get rid of extra material so I could start this bevel in. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and put my stripe on here. This side we just tipped it down to that line. And this serves the same function, but it doesn't have a stress riser right here for stone to break to. So we'll probably try to put a small line right there. I'm going to go ahead and cut this line right on top of the red pencil, and just like I did before. Then we'll come back to this point. For doing a cut like this, I prefer a round chisel. It enters the stone better. You have more control, because as soon as the crown breaks through the surface of the stone, the sides slow it down a little bit. So you get a chance to stroke it a little bit and to make a better cut. If you put a straight chisel on the stone and try to go straight along, you'll end up going down or going up. It's really hard to go straight and keep your posture and go a long ways. After you've got a channel, it's easier, but still, you go fast, succeed faster, you fail fast. And I'd rather go through it like I showed you with a round chisel that'll enter the cut. This is how I cut a line if I got to cut a niche or anything like that. I'll use a round chisel. Now I'll take my ripper and work this in. I'm going to be careful on this edge, because this edge will just fly right off. I'm going to try to mark it right here. And at this point, I'm marking it right to the bottom of that bevel, okay? Courses with the round chisel and the ripper. I put a line on both sides of this corner. Got a little bit of that top off. I'm going to make sure that when I come in to waste this off, that I stay up and I work down. I'm not out here on the corner. I want to leave that piece there. I'll work it down, and then I'll come back and I'll slowly shave it off all together. Working towards, I'm coming back closer and closer, but I'm pushing the stone away. Now that I've got a pretty good break in there, good relief, I can cut this down here a little bit, and then I can waste this top off. Now I can come in with a straight chisel, probably the wide one, and just shave that corner down. Go slow. As this corner comes down, it gets to be very dangerous. You put this corner on, it's different mindset. You can cut this corner later, but if you leave a chunk of stone sitting up, it's easier to bump it, blow that corner off. If you cut this corner and make it nice, and then you do all this work, it's easy to bump it and knock it off. So you have to decide what you're going to do. When we do like a plinth on a statue, I'll lay out my plinth, and once I cut it, a lot of times I've cut it before then I've still got to axe the whole stone, the whole statue, whatever. I'll put I'll make a piece of, take a couple pieces of 1x, make a skirt to put around it, so that if I happen to drop a chisel or knock over a lamp, then it won't hopefully break that. It won't hit it at all. So this is, once you start doing this is when it gets real. Now you're wasting the rest of this off. If I have to lower this to make up for that, it looks like I'm right on the money. It humps up here and drops down there, but this should be good because this is good. So if I have to lower it, I'll just shave it in this way, and this way, and axe it very carefully with a very sharp chisel. Like I said, when you start doing sharp work, you can say, yeah, a chisel lasts a lot longer than 2 hours. But when you start using a sharp chisel and you keep it sharp, buddy, it doesn't last. And after some axing, we got a fairly nice corner now. It's still high. Got a little low spot right here where I cut that first pad. But don't worry about that because we still got stone to axe off here. I'd rather leave this a little heavy while I'm doing this whole panel and make it perfect, and then do the whole panel and get off to this other side and have a problem, and then I got to fix it. Get it close, get it all roughed in, put together. See, this is still pretty high, and so this low spot that looks low is still, this is going to drop, and so that'll lift this up. So let's go ahead and keep working and strip this off. I'll cut that corner. I'm going to show you this corner here and how I'll put that one in. Went ahead, took my round chisel and my ripper and cut it in both ways. I got it checked all the way out to the corner. So there's a cut, which is a stop cut, stress riser, so if it does blow out, it'll come down. But I can take this and I can go and bevel that edge right off. Nice sharp blade, nice and square, not rounded. Now you can cut the whole thing off. If you can cut it straight in if you want. I don't. Do what you want. I know most people do these panels with a saw and a grinder, and they just work on them and work on them and work on them until they're kind of close. Then they shoot them they frost them, sandblast them, or steel them, and call it good enough. This is how you do it the right way. Cut it off first. So now I'll push this off, and I'll just work that in with a chisel. Instead of trying to saw this whole panel off. I can saw it down, but then I got to cut through the saw skin, and as soft and fragile as this mahogany is, and it's fracturing on its own, I don't want to add any heat to it, cause it to create any more of a problem. I can go ahead, got that in 1/2 inch, and go ahead and just work the rest of this off and bulk it all off, and we'll scrape these corners up. I'll show you here at the end. But the rest of this is all going to be just like we did on the other faces. We're going to cut them off, get it kind of close, leave a little bit of crown, go around and round, resolve this crown and this crown at the same time to pull the edge together. Then after we get the crown straightened out, then we'll carefully make sure these corners are where they need to be, because we may have to move the corners just a little bit to get everything. As long as they hold, I hope I can leave them right where they're at. But we'll have to get the corners really close, and then get the crown really close, and then work it in together, because we'll do all that work and they'll pop right off. You got to push it all down, do it all over. So really think about how careful you're working and how long it takes to get there, so that everything can close up and wrap up at the end, because we're going to have 1, 2 corners perfect on this panel. 1, 2, 3 sides. Get this 4th side done, we can go to the back and get that wonky panel done, which is probably going to be harder than the other panels, because at one end we're only going to take off a tiny amount, and so it's pretty dangerous. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm going to just blow this panel off, and we'll be back in a while. This is an excellent example. I want to stop and show you real quick. I'm wasting this stone off. Just went around the corner, put some stripes in with a saw, nice and evenly spaced, so they break out pretty straight, pretty even. But remember, this is a run side, so it tends to shift. The grain either goes like this, or maybe this way. And the way we look at this face, it was racked kind of like a parallelogram. So we know this is the run, and the run doesn't break straight, it runs. That's why you call it the run. So I cut a nice long straight line here. I'm staying up, 1/2 inch, 5/8 of an, probably even 3/4 of an inch from this line to rough it off. Cut a stripe in, put a stress riser just to stop, cut across there to break it out. Got over here, and it broke almost a quarter inch below that line. If that had been over here on the corner, that's what I'm talking about. So you got to be really careful. That's why I stayed up on this, and then I'll break it in. And the last bit, I'll go down with a 9-point to pulverize it down instead of trying to break it off and take a lot. It's that right there. That's a deal breaker. If that was over here on this corner, we'd be starting this whole panel all over again. Back to cut. Okay, we've got a problem. My corners are fine, the front edge is okay, all that stuff. I'm working this back, and this is the low spot that had been about a 1/4 inch above this line. And this spot here was right on the line where I had sort of estimated when I was laying these lines out in the beginning. But remember in the last video, as we worked on this face, I said we've got to make sure that I don't have problems with the stone or a big dig along this line, because I've got to have quality stone in order to be able to cut a good edge there. Well, right here, this is the low spot on the back that was still way above my line. The more I push it down, and pushing it down by spanning it, I'm not working in the actual void, because that's why the stone's a different color. It's lighter around and it's darker in the center. I've still got a really serious, fragile issue right here through this whole thing. That's where the edge is going to be when I turn this and cut that face off. And I really don't want to have a great big giant chunk fall out, especially right next to a corner. So this is one of the hazards of using a mahogany or a stone that isn't as tight grained, because these big grains fracture. We'll try to get a picture of the polish, and you see a million little tiny cracks. The only way to solve this, I'm going to push this down until it's sound. I'm just going to go right in there and carefully cut it out. And if I have to go down, whatever, an 1/8, a 1/4, a 1/2 inch, whatever it takes to get the sound stone, and then I got to start all over and cut these corners. You're going to have to drop a line and just go ahead and do it again. So this is part of the risk of using this type of a stone. It may be very pretty, but these big popcorn white things and all these fractures and flaws, you know, we've got cracks in here, little things where there's failures, stuff like that, and above here isn't a big deal when it's in here. If it's on the edge, that's not good. So I'm just going to start all over again with this panel, push this top down until I got sound stone, and we'll probably wrap this video up and come back to show the end of this, maybe the cut on the other side, just the other corners. It's going to just be the same thing, but this is what you got to plan for. This is why you choose your stone carefully, because you'll have either inclusions in marble, or you can't have them in granite, or you'll have stone that just isn't as structurally sound, so it's not ideal for work like this. So this is reality, buddy. That right there ain't any good. So I expect a 1/4 inch will clean it up. We'll see. Anyways, back to the drawing board once again. My name's Clint Button here at Carolina Sculpture Studio, showing how it really is cutting stone for a living, teaching you how to do it right here at the Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.